Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Long Night in the Valley by Maraleus. Chapter 5. Toshinori found himself thinking about his brief and extremely ill-advised time as a quirkless vigilante. He had a sinking suspicion that it was because of his uninvited mental guests. But he couldn't exactly do anything about that. Between the two of them, Izuku had always been better at the mental portion of their quirk. He finished washing the bleach out of Izuku's hair, and couldn't help but wonder if Izuku had ever contemplated going down that path. It had been cruel, and knowing what he did now, he would never repeat it. But his speech to Izuku on that rooftop had been intended to keep him away from making the same mistakes Toshinori had in his youth. If Nana hadn't picked him up, he shuddered to think what would happen to him. He'd certainly been in over his head, hitting far above his weight class. Although, to be honest, they weren't in a good position right now either. "I'm sorry," said Izuku softly. "It isn't your fault," said Toshinori, "but I couldn't make him leave, and now he's going after your secrets. My boy, they sent a highly skilled infiltrator into your mind." Toshinori was not entirely sure how he knew this, but it felt correct. "You don't have the training to combat that. What you have done is remarkable." He toweled Izuku's hair. The water and the product had conspired to make it less fluffy than usual. "The last you told me, you couldn't even manifest fully in that place." "I tried to distract them," Izuku said miserably. "It didn't work. He's still there." It's alright, said Toshinori. "Other than one for all, I don't have any secrets worth all these tears. It might be annoying if they found out about all the illegal stuff he'd done over the years, but most of it was nigh impossible to prove. Let's get you into that suit." "Right," said Izuku, peeling out of his quirk. "Why a suit, though? It's something you'd never choose to wear, and relatively anonymous," said Toshinori. He started to put his own coat on, checking for all the hidden pouches were filled. To stay true to his disguise, Izuku was only carrying a messenger bag, and they would need the supplies. "How do I look?" asked Izuku. The first thing Toshinori noticed was that he hadn't bothered with the tie, but Toshinori had planned to take care of that from the beginning. The second thing, Toshinori did not blanch. "Of course that's what he looks like," whispered 7 or so voices. "Knew from the beginning. Have to read the DNA to rewrite it. Can't give it just to anyone." "Yes, of course. You look wonderful," said Toshinori, reaching for the tie, "and also unrecognizable." "Well, that's the point, right?" asked Izuku, running a hand through his hair. "So, how are we doing this?" Toshinori made a face. He wasn't terribly good at this part. There was a reason he'd relied so heavily on Sir Nightai once upon a time. "I could come up with a plan," proposed Izuku. "Tell me how Trace's quirk works." The fight reached the other side of the tunnel and spilled out into the bright yellow sunlight. Midoriya had been fighting Ida up until now, but upon exiting the tunnel he had run off, not before stabbing Suzuki in the eye with a pencil. Meanwhile, All Might, Teenage Menace Special Edition, was holding his own against them. One thing Aizawa didn't understand was why All Might wasn't using his quirk. Thankfully, after leaving the tunnel, the boy began to falter. and then ran off after Midoriya. Aizawa wasn't interested in pursuing them either. Were there questions he wanted answered? Yes. Did he want them answered at the cost of invading his student's privacy and breaking his trust? No. In the meantime, he did have to see if the idiot needed medical care. That was unfortunately part of his job. Want help with that? Aizawa asked. No, said Suzuki, pulling the pencil out. In less than a second, his eye was fine. That hurt, he complained. A small part of Aizawa mourned the fact that breaking Suzuki's leg would not be enough to stop him. A small but very present part. He pushed it away. Thinking on might-have-beens was illogical. Sensei, asked Uraraka, I think we're in America. All the signs are in English. She pointed. The signs were in fact in English. Considering how much time All Might had spent in America, it wasn't terribly surprising that Midoriya would construct such a place for him in his mind, although he had to wonder why Midoriya's mind had a teenage vigilante All Might running around in it. Because if he were Midoriya in this situation, he would pick any All Might. He'd pick top of his game, natural disaster All Might. So this had to be All Might that Midoriya just had, for some reason. This proves it, said Todoroki. Proves what? Asked Aizawa. That Midoriya is All Might's secret love child. Ida sighed heavily, leaving off prodding his formerly impaled shoulder. Think about it, said Todoroki, as emotive as Aizawa had ever seen him. Who else would All Might tell about his dark past? Regrettably, he had a point. Add that to the quirk, and the smile, and how they meet up for lunch at least once a week. That is literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard, said Suzuki. All Might is a natural-born hero, a pillar of society. Yes, said Todoroki, squinting at Suzuki as if daring him to say something that made sense. He isn't going to have a secret love child. Regrettably, he also had a point. Much less like Midoriya Izuku. Okay, the point was gone. In any case, black tentacles are not like All Might's general enhancer quirk. It's like his mother's though, said Todoroki. Even though I keep saying secret love child, my current theory is Midoriya-san and All Might are in fact married, but they had to do it in secret so that All Might's enemies wouldn't find out. Todoroki, please, you can't just spread baseless rumors like that about your classmates, said Ida, chopping at the air, much less your classmates' families. Todoroki looked hurt. But I have evidence. Aizawa should probably put a stop to this, but he wanted to see where it was going, and there was no way this was true at all. If Midoriya was All Might's child, he would never shut up about it. All Might, that was. Midoriya was evidently capable of keeping secrets. On the other hand, Aizawa didn't have a better theory for their obvious close bond. What evidence? Asked Ida, clearly intrigued despite himself. Midoriya is amazing. Todoroki's eyes sparkled like he was in a manga. Aizawa sighed. He should have known the evidence would... Wait, where's Uraraka? Uraraka really should be paying more attention, especially after all the situational awareness classes Aizawa-sensei had given them. Izuku, didn't blame her. This was a distracting situation, and he rather suspected being asleep and dreaming was affecting their judgment. Still, it was almost too easy to pull her to the side and through a door into another part of the dream. But after that, she shook his grip and readied a fighting stance. "I don't want to fight," he whispered, making a quelling motion. Uraraka looked. She wanted to believe him, but frowned. Sorry, but I kind of find it hard to believe after you stabbed Ida. I mean, I know you're under the effects of a quirk and all, but you're still under the effects of a quirk." Despite her words, she matched his volume. I know, said Izuku. "It looks bad, but..." He wrung his fingers together and adjusted his sleeves of his uniform. "There's something you guys need to know about what's going on, and you are the easiest to grab. Can I explain? I'm not going to fight you guys anymore. Not like this. Not like I was." Uraraka sighed, relaxed her shoulders just slightly. "Alright, Deku, She faltered. "Midoriya?" "You can still call me Deku," said Izuku. "I mean, it is my hero name." "Yes, but they used it to hurt you, didn't they?" Izuku shrugged. This wasn't the conversation he wanted to have. "I guess if you want to, you can call me Izuku. It would feel weird for you to go calling me Midoriya." Uraraka blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Then you can call me Ochako." Izuku blushed. "Okay," he said in a tiny voice. He coughed. "So, imagine you're in a room at the facsimile of the American diner. You're standing in the middle." Ochako nodded. "Sure," she said. "Right, so you can't see all the walls at once, no matter how you turn, unless, like, you have some kind of vision-related quirk, or a quirk like Shuji's, I guess." Izuku shook his head, putting aside that train of thoughts for a moment. "Does that make sense so far?" "Yes," said Ochako, "but I don't see what it has to do with this." She spread her hands in front of her. "Well, it's what was going on back there." He gestured vaguely towards where they'd come from. "From the beach until the tunnel, you're in my head. Kind of inside my personality, I guess. So, you couldn't see the whole thing at once, just the walls from the inside. Each one of them is me. Each one of me was like a different wall. You couldn't see the whole shape. They were incomplete." "Okay," said Ochako. "But that should still be what's happening then, right? We're still in your head." "Yeah, that's why I need to talk to you. This is me, the me you're talking to right now. I'm complete, because you're seeing me from the outside now. Well, almost complete. Like, you can't see the other side of the room from the outside." "Oh no, All Might is right. I'm terrible at metaphors." He buried his face in his hands. "It's fine," said Ochako. "But, you're saying we're in someone else's head?" "Sort of. Just not my dreamscape. Mindscape? It's complicated." He lifted his head. Izuku-kun, is this All Might's mind?" It was going to be pretty obvious once everyone woke up, so Izuku nodded. "Why? How?" "I can't explain everything right now. It's too much, and I don't know if the Commission has someone listening with a telepathy quirk from the outside. I know they're not using it on me, because I'm awake, but... What? You're awake? Sort of. It's a side effect of what's going on here. I woke up when Suzuki shot me, and I'm sort of on the run. It's really not something I can give details about though, because listening. Ochako took a deep breath. So, what did you want to tell me? Well, all of that, but also, we need to coordinate. It would be best if we could get Suzuki to stay in one place. I don't think that's going to happen though. We were trying to do that before. I kinda thought so. The problem is, if you're moving around, you're going to run into All Might like you ran into me back in my dreamscape. If Suzuki's quirk works the way I think it does, and he keeps using it on me, that's not a problem at this point. But if he starts using it on All Might, that's different. You know what his quirk is? Ochako raised her eyebrows. I think he can make people think of particular topics, said Izuku, like secrets and stuff, which is why him realizing he's in All Might's mind would be bad. Ochako nodded and perched on the edge of the tables. All Might was the #1 hero for so long, she said. I'd be surprised if he didn't know a whole bunch of different classified things. Should we try going back? I'd say yes, but I need my brain power for escaping, not rendering traumatic moments from my childhood, and I know a lot of different classified things, some of which are significantly more recent. Plus, I'm not sure All Might will let you go back. Oh, said Ochako, tilting her head. Don't take this the wrong way, but there isn't any truth behind Todoroki's secret love child theory, is there? Absolutely not, said Izuku. Okay, I'm guessing you have a plan? More like a distraction, said Izuku. I don't know how well this will work, but... said Izuku as he shouldered his bag, both fascinated and horrified. With your head shaved and the face mask, you kinda look like, said Toshinori, uncertain how to react to realizing that he had dressed both himself and his successor as their worst enemy. I suppose, he said. The code is very different, though. Yes, it is. Speaking of which, Toshinori forcibly changed the topic. Remember to take the tie off if you get into a fight. It's too easy to grab on to. Izuku nodded, partially distracted by the conversation happening in his head. Then he blinked. Vigilantism? Toshinori shrugged sheepily. Did he ever consider it? All Izuku had ever wanted to do was help people, save people. Heroics has been the best option. For a while, the only option. In theory, a person could get into heroics on merit and skill. Everything else, anything like a doctor, or a police officer, or a lawyer, it would have been impossible for a quirkless person. Even finding housing would be difficult for the quirkless, because most landlords had people disclose their quirks to prevent accidents from bad quirk interactions. Toshinori wrapped an arm around Izuku's shoulder. For a moment, Izuku had forgotten he'd been listening in. For a moment, he'd forgotten how bitter he could be at that particular moment. Not then, he said. He'd known he'd never survive without training. He couldn't get training he couldn't get except at a hero school like UA. But now? We'll make quite a duo, won't we, my boy? They need to leave before Trace got too close. They both had their directions, but it didn't really matter if they remembered them clearly or not. not when they could hear and feel each other, and they had so much help. They exited the hideout, climbed up through the storm drains, navigated through the building above them, walked a block together, and split up without another word. Trace's quirk could tell where a person had been. She wasn't good at determining when they'd been there. Any trails left within 2 hours of each other looked more or less the same, according to a registration with the Hero Commission. According to an interview Izuku had seen of her once, after 10, the trail entirely disappeared. She needed to have the trail to follow it. If Izuku and Toshinori looped over their trails often enough, she wouldn't be able to tell which trail was which. With luck and planning, they could lead her in maze-like loops, breaking their trail up with buses and jumps between buildings, and get a head start on her, a head start they would use to outdistance her, because her tracing quirk took time to work. At least, that's what Izuku hoped would happen. In reality, the Commission records tend to be out of date. Heroes rarely gave their complete, correct information about their quirks to the public, and even Izuku's encyclopedia of knowledge had limits. After all, encyclopedias gave short overviews of their subjects. But there had to be some relation between reality and record. Izuku's self-preservation skills were trash, but 8 minds whirled behind his, more than ready to put theirs to work for him. The consensus was to fight, and in his state, they would operate by the consensus. 9 of them together. 9 here, keeping them physically away from the Commission. 9 inside, keeping their secret safe. 9 keeping the doors strong and the vault closed. He stumbled at the unexpected direction of his thoughts. His head throbbed. It would be much easier if they weren't in his head anymore. He hurried forward. Miles away, in the most secure prison in the country, the guards of the most dangerous villain in the world scrambled for answers. They had sedated the man known as All for One to what was frankly a dangerous degree. He hadn't so much as twitched in hours, nor had he spoken even before that. But his brain activity was elevated, highly elevated. It had been for hours, and they had no idea why. All for One smiled at the vault door in front of him. It had been a long time since he'd seen it, but nevertheless his memory of it was pristine. It was, after all, a place he visited often in his thoughts. But this wasn't then. This wasn't a result of him being lost in thought. Oh no, this was something infinitely more interesting, infinitely more valuable. He ran his hand through his curly hair and hummed contemplatively. Interesting, interesting indeed. He walked to the door and ran his fingers down the cold interior, little scrapes and nicks catching at his fingertips. Now this was more detail than he had retained, but not perhaps more detail than, say, someone who had imprisoned here for a long time would recall. A smile stretched out over his face, wild and sparkling and full of glee. This, he thought, would be quite amusing. He pulled his hand and made a fist. Knock, knock, little brother. Izuku slowed to a stop in the middle of the sidewalk. That. He blinked hard. That would be a problem. He started walking again, faster, Toshinori leaned against the grimy city wall, out of breath. The mask was thick and made it hard to breathe, especially with a singular lung. Of course, what made him gasping wasn't anything physical, but the massive weight of dread that had just settled in his chest. Was Izuku in trouble? Did the commission get him? No. Slowly, uneasily, he rotated until he faced Tartarus. Ah, not again. Izuku broke off mid-sentence and grabbed Ichaku by the wrist as the restaurant vibrated. What was that? Said Ochako. A problem, said Izuku, staring off into the distance, as if he was seeing something completely different. Well, he could be, Ochako realized. Something in the real world, wherever you are? No, said Izuku. Change of plans. You guys really need to get out of here. He pulled her out of the door onto the streets. The sky was rapidly darkening. He seemed to realize he was still holding onto her. He blushed, dropping her wrist. Sorry. We don't know how, though. We don't know how, but... Izuku bit his lower lip. Yeah. One might be able to do something, but if they're closer... Can't just wait. Can we still wait? What do you think? What would work? Maybe. We can work with maybe. 7, that's too far. Okay, yep. Izuku-kun? Sorry. I think you might have to go forward after all. The others have been here longer than I have. They know more. He started running down the street. Come on! Others? What others? Said Ochako, hurrying to catch up. The others were connected to me and All Might. He wasn't looking at her as he ran. If you ask them, they'll know more than me. They've been doing this longer, and this is tangled in one's quirk. One of them might have seen a quirk like this before, been in a position before, but it's really dangerous for you to be here right now. Why? Izuku stopped and bounced in place. Weakened mental immune system, basically. Something else is trying to get in. Can't do both at the same time. A building behind them exploded in rumble. He winced. What's going on? A flashback. Toshinori. He shook his head, pointed down the cross street. If you go this way, you'll be able to meet back up with everyone. What's the plan? Izuku shook his head. Just try to stay alive for now. This isn't going to be fun. I'm sorry, I have to go. Before Ochako could protest further, he was gone. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this new chapter. It's been a while since I updated this series. Anyways, I'm probably going to try and update this series more often. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Bye!